They say the forest is quiet at night. But Arthur Bishop knew better. He knew that silence was never truly silence. It was a warning, a breath before the storm, the stillness that only came when something dangerous was near. That night, standing on the porch of his isolated cabin, he felt it. The woods around him were darker than usual, the stars hidden by thick clouds, the air charged like before a lightning strike. Then he heard it, the low growl of engines, heavy and synchronized, coming from deep inside the trees. Bishop's instincts flared alive. He grabbed his binoculars and moved quietly down the slope, every step practiced, controlled, like the soldier he used to be. And then he saw them. 4 massive trucks, matte black, no plates, no insignias, moving in perfect formation down an old logging road that hadn't been used in years. Their headlights were cut, only faint red glows marking the taillights as they rumbled through the forest like shadows given shape. But it wasn't a trucks that froze Bishop's blood. It was what he glimpsed when one door rattled open for a second, a steel cage inside, and within it, a woman, pale, terrified, clutching the bars with desperate fingers. Bishop blinked, heart hammering, and for a split second thought his mind was playing tricks on him. Because the woman's face, it was impossible. He knew that face. It was Lena. Lena, the woman he had once loved, the one he had buried in his memories after her death years ago. She was supposed to be gone, but she was there, alive, and chained in the back of a ghost convoy. Bishop's first instinct was to rush forward, to charge at the convoy, rip the doors open, and pull Lena out with his bare hands. But years of experience, of battlefields and scars, held him still. Rushing in meant death for him, and for her. So he crouched low in the brush, watching every detail, memorizing the way the trucks moved, the spacing between them, the rhythm of the engines. The guards, because that's what they had to be, sat in the back of 2 of the vehicles, rifles resting casually on their laps, but their eyes were sharp, scanning the tree line like hawks. These weren't amateurs. Whoever they were, they knew how to move unseen, how to vanish without a trace, and that terrified Bishop more than the guns. Because if they could operate like ghosts here, it meant they had power. The convoy pushed deeper into the woods, following a trail Bishop himself had hiked 1,000 times. He knew exactly where it led. The old quarry, abandoned for decades, forgotten by everyone but the forest itself. His pulse quickened. An abandoned quarry was the perfect place to disappear people. No prying eyes, no escape routes, only stone walls and silence. He followed them as quietly as he could, slipping through the trees, the old instincts of tracking and stalking waking in his muscles. Each step was careful, each breath measured. When they finally reached the quarry, Bishop found a vantage point high. Above, below, floodlights snapped on, bathing the ground in harsh white. The trucks rolled into a wide circle, dust rising like fog. Men spilled out 12, maybe 15 each, armed, each moving with discipline. They weren't just thugs. They were trained. He raised his binoculars again, and his chest tightened. The cage was dragged out of the truck and set down like cargo. Lena was inside, her eyes wide with fear, her hands trembling as she clutched the bars. Bishop's mind reeled. It couldn't be her. He had stood at her funeral. He had thrown dirt on her grave. And yet every detail screamed it was Lena. The way her hair fell across her face, the scar on her wrist from a climbing accident years ago, the same look she used to give him when she wanted him to believe in something impossible. His hands shook, but he steadied them. There was no room for doubt, not now. Whoever these men were, whatever their plan, it involved her. And Bishop knew one thing with absolute clarity. He wasn't going to let them take her away again. Not this time. As he lowered the binoculars, his old soldier's mind was already working, already calculating. Numbers, angles, distances, weapons. He didn't know why Lena was alive, or why she was in that cage. But he knew one thing: this convoy didn't just belong to men. It belonged to something bigger, something darker. And he was about to find out what. Bishop stayed low on the ridge above the quarry, eyes darting between the men below. They moved with precision, almost military, but their uniforms were mismatched black combat gear with no insignia, no flags, no identification. Ghosts. He counted 15 men, 2 on elevated positions near the floodlights, rifles slung across their shoulders. Snipers, maybe. The rest guarded the cage or unloaded heavy crates from the trucks. Those crates bothered him. They were too big, too heavy, carried by 2 men each. Weapons, ammunition, or something worse. Then, a new figure stepped out from the lead truck. Unlike the others, he didn't wear a helmet. His suit was sharp, tailored, black as midnight. and his shoes gleamed even in the dust. He carried himself with the calm authority of a man used to being obeyed. The others deferred to him without a word. Bishop's jaw clenched. This was the man in charge. The suited man approached the cage. Lena flinched as he crouched in front of her, his expression almost gentle, like he was examining a rare specimen. He said something Bishop couldn't hear from this distance, but Lena's face twisted in fear, then defiance. She spied through the bars. The man only smiled. Rage surged in Bishop's chest, hot and uncontrollable. He wanted to move to break cover, to end it right there, but he forced himself to wait, to think. Charging in blind was suicide, and Lena needed him alive. He scanned the quarry again, eyes locking on the crates. One had been pried open. Bishop adjusted his binoculars and saw what was inside rows of sealed canisters, marked with biohazard symbols. His stomach dropped. This wasn't just about Lena. This was bigger, much bigger. The man in the suit stood and gave an order. The guards moved quickly, securing the cage with chains and dragging it toward the largest truck, the one Bishop hadn't seen open yet. He shifted his position, trying to get a better look. And that's when it happened, a sharp crack under his boot. A branch. One of the guards' heads snapped upward, eyes narrowing at the ridge. Bishop froze, muscles coiled, breath caught in his throat. A beam of light swept across the trees, searching. Another guard raised his rifle. Bishop cursed silently. He'd been careful, but not careful enough. The suited man looked up now, his eyes sharp as knives, scanning the darkness. He barked an order, and instantly half the guards fanned out toward the trees. Dogs started barking, their growls echoing against the quarry walls. Bishop had minutes, maybe seconds, before they reached his position. He pulled back, slowly, slipping into the thicker brush, every move deliberate. But inside, his mind was racing. He had confirmation now. Lena was alive, but she wasn't just a prisoner. She was leverage, connected to something involving biological weapons and a man who had the resources to move like a phantom. Bishop's instincts screamed the same truth. If he walked away tonight, he would never see her again. And Arthur Bishop wasn't the kind of man to walk away. Bishop slipped deeper into the shadows, heart pounding but movement steady. He'd been hunted before, but tonight he had something to lose. The dogs were the biggest problem. He could hear them crashing through the undergrowth, their handlers close behind. He needed a distraction fast. His eyes darted to his belt. He had only the essentials from his cabin: a knife, a lighter, and a coil of thin rope. It wasn't much, but Bishop had made do with less in worse places. He crouched low, grabbed a handful of dry brush, and lit it with the lighter. The flames caught quickly, the smoke curling upward into the night. He tossed it into a hollow lock 20 feet away and slipped in the opposite direction. Within seconds, the dogs went wild, their handlers yanking them toward the fire. The floodlights shifted, beams slicing through the dark. But Bishop was gone. From a new vantage point, he saw the men loading Lena's cage into the truck. His teeth clenched. If they drove off, he'd lose her in the wilderness, maybe forever. He needed to hit them before they moved out. His eyes fell on the crates of biohazard canisters. Dangerous, yes, but also an opportunity. If he could cause chaos there, it would buy him the opening he needed. He slid down the slope like a shadow, knife in hand, weaving through cover until he was close enough to smell the oil and sweat from the guards. Two men stood by the crates, rifles slung lazily over their shoulders. Bishop moved fast, silent. One sharp jab under the ribs, another across the throat. Both men dropped before they could cry out. Bishop caught one of the rifles before it hit the ground and eased it down. Now he had a weapon, and more importantly, a plan. He rigged one of the crates with a thin rope and a lighter, creating a crude but effective fuse. Then, as the truck engine roared to life, he struck. He stepped from the shadows, rifle raised, and fired 3 quick shots. The floodlight above shattered, plunging half the quarry into darkness. Shouts erupted, guards spinning in confusion. Bishop opened fire again, not to kill, but to sow chaos. Bullets sparked against steel, ricocheting off the quarry walls. Men scrambled for cover. The suited man shouted orders, but before he could restore control, the crate behind him ignited. Flames licked upward, then exploded, sending shards of metal and smoke into the night. Panic ripped through the guards. The dogs howled. And in the middle of it all, Bishop moved. He sprinted straight for the truck holding Lena's cage. Gunfire cracked around him, dirt exploding at his feet, but he didn't stop. He fired back, dropping one guard, then another. He reached the track just as a guard tried to climb inside. Bishop grabbed him by the collar, slammed his head into the steel frame, and ripped him out of the cab. Arthur, A voice cried from the cage. He froze. For just a second, the world went silent. Lena's voice. It was her. Real. Alive. "I'm getting you out," he growled, yanking at the lock on the cage. It wouldn't budge. Heavy, reinforced. He cursed under his breath. Behind him, more guards closed in, rifles raised. No time. Bishop dove into the truck cab, hot-wired it in seconds, and slammed his foot on the gas. The engine roared, the wheels screamed, and the truck lurched forward, dragging the cage with it. Guards dove out of the way. Bullets pinged off the steel frame. But Bishop drove like a man possessed, smashing through the quarry side gate. Sparks flew as the cage rattled violently in the back. Lena, holding on for dear life. The convoy had become a hunt, but this time the ghost wasn't theirs to command. It was Bishop's turn to vanish into the night. The truck tore down the dirt road like a beast unleashed, tires skidding on gravel, the cage in the back slamming against the frame with every turn. Bishop gritted his teeth, hands locked on the wheel, eyes darting between the road ahead and the rearview mirror. Behind him, headlights erupted. 3 of the black convoy trucks had broken off to give chase, engines howling like wolves on the hunt. Gunfire cracked. Bullets tore through the back panels, sparks flying as metal screamed. Lena ducked low inside the cage, clutching the bars, terror etched across her face. Bishop swerved hard, the truck fishtailing, sending dust clouds into the night. He needed cover. Open road was suicide. His mind mapped the terrain instinctively. He knew these woods, every trail, every cut. There was only one place that gave him a chance, the river crossing. 2 miles ahead. If he could make it there, he could vanish into the wilderness. The pursuing trucks closed in, their engines snarling. One pulled alongside, a gunner leaning out the window with an assault rifle. Bishop jerked the wheel left, slamming into the side of the truck. Metal crunched, glass shattered, the gunner tumbled out into the dirt. The enemy truck swerved, lost control, and rolled violently into the trees in a thunder of fire and sparks. 2 left. The second truck accelerated, ramming Bishop's rear bumper. The cage rattled violently, Lena screaming as she was thrown against the bars. Bishop cursed under his breath and floored the gas. His engine roared, the old truck pushing past its limits. The road narrowed into a sharp bend. Bishop yanked the wheel, tires screeching, the truck leaning dangerously onto wheels before slamming back down. The convoy truck behind wasn't so lucky it hit the bend too fast, careened off the edge, and plunged into the ravine below in a storm of fire. 1 left. The last truck was smarter, keeping its distance, waiting for Bishop to slip. Its headlights cut through the dust like predator eyes, steady and unrelenting. Bishop pushed forward, the roar of the river growing louder now. He could see the crossing ahead, a rickety old bridge spanning a raging current. His mind raced. The bridge wouldn't hold both trucks. He needed to end this here. As he thundered onto the bridge, the wooden planks groaned under the weight. The pursuing truck followed, its grille almost kissing Bishop's bumper. Bishop slammed the brakes. His truck jolted to a halt, the cage screeching forward, but the convoy truck had no time to react. It plowed straight into Bishop's rear, the combined weight shaking the breech to its core. Wood splintered, cables snapped, and with a deafening crack, the entire structure gave way. Bishop threw the gear into reverse, tires screaming, as the convoy truck behind him plunged into the river below, swallowed by the churning waters. For a breathless moment, his own truck teetered on the edge. Then, with a roar, he pushed it back onto solid ground, the bridge collapsing completely behind him. Silence, just the sound of the river and his own ragged breathing. He climbed out of the cab, boots crunching on gravel, and ran to the cage. Lena was on her knees inside, shaking, her eyes wide and locked on him. "It's you," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Arthur, it's really you." Bishop's throat tightened. He pressed his hands against the bars, meeting her gaze. "I buried you. I watched them lower you into the ground. How the hell are you alive?" Her lips trembled, tears filling her eyes. "Arthur, they never let me go." And with those words, Bishop knew his nightmare had only just begun. Bishop's pulse hammered in his ears. He kept his grip tight on the cage, eyes locked on Lena, searching for lies, for tricks. But it was her, the scar on her wrist, the tremor in her voice, the look in her eyes. She was alive. Somehow, impossibly alive. "What do you mean they never let you go?" he growled, his voice low, taut with anger and confusion. Lena shook her head, her hands trembling as she clutched the bars. "That funeral, it wasn't me. They staged it. They made you think I was gone because it was easier to control you." The words slammed into Bishop like a hammer. Control him? For what? He wanted to demand answers, to shake the truth out of her, but headlights cut through the trees, slicing the night. Bishop's instincts flared. Reinforcements. He snapped back into soldier mode. They had maybe 60 seconds. He scanned the cage lock. Industrial, reinforced. No way to break it in time. He cursed under his breath and grabbed Lena's hand through the bars. Stay quiet. Stay alive. I'll get you back. Before she could answer, he vaulted into the truck cab, fired the engine, and pushed it down the trail. Behind him, more black trucks roared into view, their lights glaring like predator eyes in the dark. He didn't have the firepower, not yet. He needed time, distance, and a plan. He cut the headlights and swerved down an old logging trail, branches scraping the sides of the truck, sparks flying as the cage rattled violently in the back. The convoy spread out, hunting him through the forest. Bishop zigzagged across trails, ducking into ravines, every turn mapped in his memory. He knew these woods better than any of them, and for now, that was his only edge. After nearly an hour of cat and mouse, he finally killed the engine and coasted down a slope into darkness. Silence swallowed the truck. He waited, listening, every muscle coiled. The convoy thundered past above, engines fading into the distance. For the first time since this nightmare began, Bishop allowed himself a breath. He climbed out, crouched by the cage, and looked at Lena. She was pale, exhausted, but alive. He pulled a knife from his belt, studied the lock, then shook his head. This thing won't break. Not here, Arthur, she whispered, her voice hoarse. You can't fight them all. You don't know who they are? Then tell me, he snapped, more harshly than he meant. Tell me what this is. Why you're alive. Why they're hunting you. Her eyes dropped, tears glistening. Because I'm not just a prisoner, she said. I'm the key to what's inside those crates. Bishop froze, her words cutting through him. The crates, the biohazard symbols, the precision of the operation. Suddenly, the pieces shifted in his mind, forming a picture darker than anything he wanted to believe. Before he could press her, the night shattered with the distant whine of helicopters. Searchlights swept across the treetops, growing closer by the second. They weren't done hunting, not by a long shot. Bishop clenched his jaw, adrenaline surging. He looked at Lena, then at the dark woods beyond. Then we move, now. And this time, we finish it. The forest erupted in beams of light as helicopters swept low there, rotors chopping the night into thunder. Bishop yanked the truck deeper into the ravine, branches clawing at the windshield, mud splattering across the hood. He cut the engine and threw a tarp over the cage, muffling Lena's presence. Then he crouched low beside her, his breathing steady, but his eyes sharp, scanning the skies through the trees. They won't stop, Lena whispered, her voice barely audible over the distant thrum of rotor blades. They'll have to, Bishop muttered, checking the rifle. He'd stolen. Everyone has limits. No, Arthur, she said, grabbing his arm. Not these men. They don't stop. They don't fail. Because they're not working for one man. They're working for something bigger. Bishop turned his head, his eyes narrowing. Talk. Her lips trembled. She swallowed hard, then forced the words out. The man in the suit, the one you saw in the quarry, his name is Marcus Vera. He's not a trafficker or a mercenary. He's worse. He runs something called the Directorate. It's a network, global, untouchable. Governments pay them. Corporations pay them. They don't exist on paper, but they control more than armies. And those crates you saw, they're bioweapons, new, engineered strains. I was part of the project, Arthur. I wasn't supposed to be, but I saw too much. And when I tried to leave, her voice cracked, and she squeezed her eyes shut. They killed me. At least, that's what they made everyone believe. They buried a body that wasn't mine and told the world Lena Cross was dead. Also, they could keep me locked away as their ghost. Bishop felt the ground shift beneath him. The funeral, the coffin, the years of mourning, it was all a lie. His fists tightened. He'd been played, used, but more than that. Lena had been erased, caged and weaponized. He leaned closer, his voice hard as steel. Why bring you here? Why now? She looked at him, fear shining in her eyes. Because I built the Felsef. The bioweapons, they don't work without me. My codes, my designs. That's why Marcus keeps me alive, and why he'll burn the world down to get me back. The forest went silent for a moment, save for the distant hum of machines. Bishop's mind raced, weighing options, calculating risks. He wasn't just fighting for Lena anymore. He was standing against a machine that fed on nations. Then we don't run, Bishop said finally, his voice low, resolve. We hit them first. Lena shook her head. Arthur, you can't fight the Directorate. No one can. A grim smile touched his lips, cold and dangerous. That's the difference between me and no one. Above, a searchlight cut across the trees, sweeping dangerously close. Bishop slung the rifle over his shoulder, grabbed Lena's cage, and pulled it deeper into the darkness. Every step was heavy, every shadow alive with danger. But in his mind, one truth burned brighter than the floodlights above. He wasn't just going to save Lena. He was going to bring the Directorate down. And Arthur Bishop had never failed a mission. Bishop moved through the forest with the precision of a predator, every step calculated, every sound catalogued. The helicopters fanned out overhead, beams slicing the treetops, but the ravine gave him cover. Lena's cage scraped against the ground as he dragged it, her breathing shallow inside. He finally reached an abandoned ranger outpost, a crumbling wooden shack half swallowed by moss and vines. Perfect. He shoved the cage inside and crouched low. Stay quiet, he told Lena, setting the rifle near the window. I'll deal with them here. She grabbed his arm desperately. Arthur, please, you can't fight them all. Bishop looked at her, his eyes flat, calm, the same eyes she remembered from the days when war zones were his second home. I don't need to fight them all, just enough. He began working quickly, turning the outpost into a kill zone. Rusted lantern fuel spilled across the floorboards, old furniture piled against the doorway, shards of broken glass scattered under the windows, where boots would land. He rigged tripwires with wire pulled from the walls, setting one near the entrance with a sharp metal spike aimed waist high. Every motion was efficient. Practice. This was the world he'd once mastered, the grim art of survival. The sound of boots and dogs grew closer. Bishop knelt by the window, rifle ready. The first figure appeared, a black-clad soldier sweeping the trees with a thermal scanner. Bishop exhaled once, steady, and fired. The man dropped instantly, his body vanishing into the undergrowth. Shouts erupted. The hunt had found its prey. They came in waves. 3 soldiers rushed the shack, smashing through the door only for the tripwire to snap. A spike tore through the first man's thigh, sending him crashing into the fuel-soaked floor. Bishop flicked his lighter and tossed it. Flames erupted, swallowing the room in an orange blaze. The men screamed, chaos ripping through their ranks. Outside, Bishop rolled through the side window, landing in the dirt. Another soldier swung his rifle up, but Bishop was already there, knife flashing, quick and brutal. He moved like a storm, striking, disappearing, reappearing in the shadows. For every shot they fired, one of their own dropped. The remaining squad pulled back, regrouping under the orders of their commander. Bishop crouched behind a fallen log, his chest heaving, sweat mixing with dirt and blood. He wasn't the young soldier anymore, age not at his strength, pain burned in his muscles, but his mind was sharper than ever. He knew how these men thought. He knew what they feared. He waited until their commander gave the signal to advance again. Then he fired, not at the men, but at the branches above them. A dead tree groaned, then snapped, crashing down and scattering the squad. Bishop used the opening to vanish into the dark again, dragging Lena's cage with him. When the smoke cleared, Marcus Vera himself arrived at the scene. His immaculate suit was untouched by the chaos, his expression calm as ever. He looked at the flames consuming the shack, at the bodies of his men scattered like broken toys. And then he smiled. Good, he murmured. Make me chase you, Bishop. It will make breaking you that much sweeter. Bishop didn't stop moving until the forest swallowed the last trace of firelight. His body screamed from the strain, his lungs burning, but he forced himself forward, dragging the cage over roots and rocks until they reached a narrow clearing. There, hidden beneath a canopy of thick pines, he finally lowered Lena to the ground. For the first time since the night began, the silence wasn't filled with engines or gunfire. It was just the whisper of wind through the trees. Bishop crouched, wiping sweat and blood from his brow. His hands shook slightly, not from fear, but from exhaustion. He hadn't fought like this in years. Not since before he tried to bury that life in solitude. But no matter how far he ran from it, the world always seemed to drag him back. Inside the cage, Lena reached for him through the bars. Her fingers brushed his arm, trembling. Arthur, you shouldn't have come for me. He met her eyes, hard but steady. I didn't choose to. They brought you into my woods. They made it my problem. His voice softened, just a fraction. And I saw you. I couldn't turn away. Tears welled in her eyes. You don't know what they'll do to you for this. I've seen worse, he muttered, but his chest tightened. For a long moment, they just stared at each other. And then Lena spoke, her voice breaking. I thought of you every day. I wanted to reach you, but they never let me. They told me you'd moved on, that you'd forgotten, that keeping me a ghost was easier for everyone. Bishop looked away, his jaw tight. Memory slammed into him, her laughter, her warmth, the life they'd almost had before it was ripped away. He thought of the grave, of nights drinking alone, of the anger that had driven him to leave the military behind. And all of it had been built on a lie. "I buried you," he said quietly, almost to himself. "I carried that weight for years, and it broke me. I left everything because of it." His voice hardened again. "And now I find out you were alive, that they kept you in a cage while I blamed myself for failing you." "I'm sorry," she whispered, tears sliding down her face. "Arthur, I never stopped fighting. But Marcus, he's not just a man. He's an empire. The Directorate doesn't let anyone go. Not me, not you, not even the governments that pay them." Bishop's eyes burned, but he steadied himself. He couldn't afford to fall apart now, not here, not with her still in chains. He placed his hand gently over hers through the bars. "Then we tear the Directorate down." Piece by piece. Before she could answer, a distant sound echoed through the trees, the low, rhythmic thump of helicopter blades. Marcus wasn't giving up. Not tonight. Bishop stood, grabbing the rifle again, every line of his body hardening back into the soldier she remembered. "They want a ghost," he growled, scanning the tree line. "I'll give them one." The sound of rotor blades grew louder, thundering through the canopy like the heartbeat of some mechanical beast. Bishop scanned the clearing, every nerve on fire. He had seconds, maybe less, before Marcus's men closed the circle around him. He crouched beside Lena's cage, his voice low but urgent. "Listen to me. They'll come heavy, and they'll come fast. Stay low, stay quiet. No matter what happens, don't move until I come back." Her eyes widened. "Arthur, you can't fight them all. I don't need to." He cut in, locking his gaze on hers. "I just need to buy us time." He slipped into the trees, melting into the dark as he had 100 times before on foreign battlefields. The forest became his ally, the crunch of leaves masked by the helicopter, the scent of pine masking his own. He circled wide until he could see the scud moving in. 12 men, night vision goggles glowing. Faintly, rifles raised, movements precise. Professional. Marcus didn't send thugs. He sent hunters. Bishop's jaw clenched. "Fine, let the hunters come." He waited until the first pair split from the formation, sweeping their lasers through the trees. Then he struck. A branch snapped overhead as he leapt from cover, knife flashing. One man fell with a gurgle. The other spun. Too slow. Bishop ripped the rifle from his hands and snapped his neck in one fluid motion. Silence reclaimed the woods. The rest of the squad tensed, forming a defensive line. Guns sweeping. "Contact!" One hissed into his comms. But Bishop was already gone, sliding between shadows. He fired 2 shots, quick and precise, dropping another guard before disappearing again. Confusion spread like fire. The commander barked orders, trying to steady his men, but Bishop kept the pressure relentless. A claymore of his own making, 2 grenades rigged with wire detonated in the brush, tearing through their flank. Screams echoed. Smoke swallowed the formation. By the time the survivors regrouped, their numbers were halved. Then the forest went quiet again. Too quiet. From the clearing, Lena pressed her face to the bars, heart hammering, trying to glimpse Arthur through the smoke. The glow of fire painted the tree line in orange. Shadows moved, fast, lethal. And then she heard it, one final shout, then a silence that felt endless. And then he emerged, Arthur Bishop, blooded, his shirt torn, rifle slung across his back. Eyes cold and sharp, he moved with the calm of a man who'd seen too much death to be shaken by more. But before he could reach the cage, a spotlight cut through the forest, blinding white. The helicopter descended, wind howling, branches snapping, and standing in the open cargo bay was Marcus Vera himself, his suit immaculate, his expression almost amused. His voice boomed over a loudspeaker. "Arthur Bishop, impressive. You fight like a man with nothing to lose. But we both know that's not true. Anymore, do we?" His eyes flicked to Lena in the cage. "She's your weakness, and your weakness is what will bury you." Bishop raised his rifle, jaw clenched, finger tightening on the trigger. But Marcus only smiled, calm as a serpent. "Pull that trigger, Bishop, and you'll never learn the truth about what we did to her, about what we did to you." For the first time that night, Bishop hesitated. Arthur Bishop's eyes were fixated on the heavy convoy advancing through the forest. He had doubts about what lay within, but what he saw at that moment nearly stopped his heart. A woman chained behind a rusty cage. This woman, eyes tired but still carrying light, was Lena. He had thought he had lost her years ago, buried her anew in every nightmare. Now, the truth, in all its cruelty, stood before him. A single question echoed in Arthur's mind. If Lena was still alive, who was behind that night's accident? That fire? The answer was imminent, at the front of the convoy, with the grinning face. From inside the armored vehicle, Marcus, Arthur's old comrade in arms, the man who had betrayed him years before, who had orchestrated everything from behind the scenes, who had made Bishop's life a living hell. Arthur held his breath. This was no ordinary rescue operation anymore. This was a reckoning with the dark side of the past. He stepped silently, the howl of the wind combined with the mechanical sound of his weapon charging. As the convoy passed through a narrow ravine, Arthur launched his attack. The first round blasted the lead vehicle away. The soldiers scattered, shouting, but Arthur's eyes were locked only on the cage. Lena's eyes flinched when she saw Arthur, then a flicker of hope. But Marcus's voice interrupted the moment. Did you think you could save her, Bishop? Do you remember that fire? I set it. While you were distracted by the battle, I burned your life. Bishop's hands trembled, but he held his aim. Anger coursed through his veins like blood. This was no longer a duty, but a penance. The booming gunfire, the clanking of metal, echoed through the vast forest. Arthur Bishop had only one goal left, to save Lena and silence Marcus forever. Arthur's eyes were fixed on Marcus. Even with dozens of men's weapons trained on him, all he saw was this, his old friend, who had been living with the word betrayal in his mind for years. Lena struggled to break free from her chains, staring at Arthur with muffled cries. Arthur, don't surrender, she cried. Marcus laughed heartily. Look at that, Bishop. It's the guilt that's been eating you up for years. I kept it. I stole your life from you. And yet you're here, alone. Always alone. Arthur's fingers were on the trigger. He had no time to think, for bullets were about to tear the air. He pulled a grenade pin and tossed it into the side of the convoy. Flames erupted, and the soldiers scattered. Arthur hurried forward, taking cover and silently taking out the men in his path. Every step he took toward Lena felt the weight of years wash over him. Hold on, I'm coming, he cried. Marcus drew his gun in anger and opened fire. Bullets whizzed past Arthur, a few scratching his skin, but he didn't stop. Finally, he reached the cage and used the steel cutter he'd pulled from his belt to break the chains. Lena said through tears, You shouldn't do this. You'll get yourself killed. Arthur looked at her only once and whispered, I promised you, I won't lose you again. At that moment, Marcus appeared. This man, walking from behind the flames, was like the devil himself. Come on, Bishop, he said through gritted teeth. It's time to settle accounts with you. No one was left around him. This was simply a duel between two veteran soldiers. The weapons fell to the ground, for Arthur's eyes held a new level of anger. Fists clashed in the air, each blow carrying years of vengeance. Marcus was strong, merciless, but Arthur was putting his daughter, his wife, and his last years into every blow. The impact was so fierce it shattered the stone floor. Finally, Arthur reached for Marcus's weapon, pressed it to the ground, and held it to his throat. Killing me won't save you, Bishop. You're already a dead man. Marcus hissed through choked breaths. Arthur's eyes shut skyward, pausing briefly. Then he unleashed all his fury upon Marcus. The last bullet pierced the silence. Marcus collapsed, the arrogance in his eyes fading. Arthur pulled Lena to her feet with trembling hands. The forest was still burning, the sky clouded with red smoke. But they both knew this fire was carrying with it the ashes of the past. Arthur took a deep breath and whispered, It's over now. The chains of the past are broken. Lena shook her head through tears. No, Arthur. Now it truly begins. A new life for you. Arthur's gaze fell on the horizon. Maybe it was true. Maybe this was just the beginning of another war. But at least once, he had regained what he thought he had lost.